This will be our last day on Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt. I wanted to mention a couple of things and then we'll go through this handout which I prepared for you. First of all, President Roosevelt, as I may have mentioned earlier, was the first president to appoint a Jewish member of cabinet, a secretary of the cabinet, his cabinet, which was a fellow by the name of Oscar Strauss. This is a great step forward, obviously, for Jews to attain such a high position. And Teddy Roosevelt was also the first person to host a black man, Booker T. Washington, who was one of the great leaders of the African American community at the time, in the White House for a dinner. Booker T. Washington joined a family dinner of the Roosevelts, and Roosevelt was so much criticized for that by the southern states, which still saw black people as inferior and not worthy of associating with white people, that he never invited a black person to dinner again. He didn't want to undergo the backlash, but he was a very, very strong advocate for that people should not be judged by their race or by their religion, but rather by their character. And therefore, I wanted to go through 15 quotes from Teddy Roosevelt about character. Oh, there's one other thing which I want to tell you about the Jewish side of Teddy Roosevelt. Some of you might have seen that. Is that the teddy bear, which was designed in honor of Teddy Roosevelt, allegedly having spared a bear, which was given to him as an opportunity to shoot, and he said he only shot bears and when they were in the wild, not when they were already captured. So for spraying that bear, a Jewish couple made the teddy bear in his honor, and the teddy bear, of course, therefore, is a Jewish invention. Having got that out of the way, those three things, which you again should know: Oscar Strauss, the cabinet secretary; Booker T. Washington, the first black invited to dinner in the White House. The irony is that most of the help in the White House was always and continues to be black. But to come into dinner, that was something else. And the third thing was the teddy bears. Now, in this handout, obviously you have quotes from Theodore Teddy Roosevelt. And I don't need you to take notes on the quotes. The quotes are there. But listen to carefully the connecting material, which I'm going to put in. And that's what you should be taking notes on. The first quote, which is on page 2, on effort. Nothing in this world is worth having or worth doing unless it means effort, pain, difficulty. We have in Pirkei Avos that almost exact statement. Fum tsara agra. Fum tsara agra means that based on the amount of pain which goes into something is the reward. In other words, you can't accomplish anything unless you have difficulty in doing it. Something which is easy is not an accomplishment. Something which you have to invest effort and toil and difficulty in, that is something which is considered to be an accomplishment. Because I also have a statement in Medrash which says, Torasi shlemadati ba'af amda li. The Torah which I learned with af was what stood for me, the Torah which I was able to maintain. Now, ba'af has several interpretations. So it means nose, but here it means either in a state of anger, meaning I had to rouse myself to learn Torah because it was so difficult, or what it probably means is af al pi. Torah af, despite when you say af al pi, even though. So Torah which is learned when it's easy to learn Torah, that's nice. But Torah is learned af al pi, despite, even though other things are going on. That's the type of Torah, that's the type of knowledge and wisdom which a person retains because it's required Mesiras Nefesh. Having one so fully engaged in it, invested in it, that's why it becomes part of one's soul. The next statement of Theodore Roosevelt, page 3. On inaction, to sit at home, read one's paper, and scoff at the misdeeds of men who do things is easy, but markedly ineffective. It's not. It is what evil men count upon good men's doing. Most people in this life sit by the wayside and don't get involved. It's easier that way and more comfortable that way. But that is what evil men count on. They count on the fact that most people will not lift a finger in order to oppose them. They don't want to get involved. So that was Teddy Roosevelt was saying that is to not get involved. When something is wrong and something is being done wrong, that is exactly what lets evil spread in the world. The next quote, is on page 4. On courage. A soft, easy life is not worth living. It impairs the fiber of the brain, heart, and muscle. We must dare to be great. We must realize that greatness is the fruit of toil, sacrifice, and high courage. For us is the life of action, of strenuous performance of duty. Let us live in the harness, striving mightily. Let us rather run the risk of wearing out than rusting out. That's how Teddy Roosevelt died. He wore out, literally. At the age of 60, he just led such an amazing, extraordinary, and active life. He just wore out. He did not rust. He did not have an opportunity to rust. So this is a very important point, which is everybody should strive for greatness. Greatness means that you have a greatness within you. Something which you are great, something which you can excel, and it's not necessarily learning. It's not necessarily something which has to do with school. It can have to do with many other things. But you have to strive for greatness, for that godless, which is the trait for which HaKadosh Baruch Hu created you and made you. Next quote, on page 5, on work. I don't pity any man who does hard work worth doing. I admire him. I pity the creature who does not work, at whichever end of the social scale he may regard himself as being. Somebody who, there's no such thing as work which is not which is not worth doing. As Gemara says, that says that a person who has to work, which is most people's world, even if he has to skin animals in the marketplace, he should do it. I'm going to bring this down here. Don't worry. Pshot nevelta b'shuka, skin dead animals, carcasses in the marketplace. Valtomer gava rabani, and don't say I'm a great person. Don't say I'm a great person that's not worthy of me, that's beneath my dignity. When a person has to work, especially when that work is something which is meaningful, despite the fact that it might have some sense of it being beneath him, that's not. To not work is what's being beneath a person. Every person has to contribute to society, to the world, to Am Yisrael, and most people are doing that by working. It's very hard to contribute if you're not working. And whatever position you find yourself in life, that is something which HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you in order for you to contribute whatever level you're on, whether it's the highest or the lowest. It doesn't matter. All you have to have in mind is I'm doing something positive for myself, for society, for my family, for the world. The next quote is on page 6. On daily life, we must show not merely in great crises, but in the everyday affairs of life, the qualities of practical intelligence, of courage, of hardihood, and endurance, and above all, the power of devotion to a lofty ideal, which made great men who founded this republic in the days of Washington, which made the men who preserved this republic in the days of Abraham Lincoln. There's the Meshech Chochmah, one of the great commentaries on Torah. He writes, we have a pasuk which says, some of you might have heard this from me at some point. Chazal say means every measure Hashem gives you. And Meshech Chochmah says that means that it's easy to be a hero when the times are heroic, but it's much harder to be a hero when the times are not so heroic. And people can be heroic when and give their lives of Kiddush Hashem and do amazing acts of heroism when the adrenaline is flowing, when the pressure is on. But the question is when things are not like that. Things are just everyday life. Can a person also demonstrate that kind of heroism, which is to day in, day out, do what they're supposed to do? Go to mini in the morning, learn what one's supposed to learn, come home and do one's chores. And that, in and of itself, that gives us full of practical intelligence, courage, hardihood, and especially endurance. HaKadosh Baruch Hu asks us to endure, to be in this quest for the long term. And that means that whatever situation we're in, whether it's heroic or not heroic, we have to be heroes. We have to rise to the occasion to use the situation as best we can. Next quote on the same page. On self-knowledge, unless man is master of his soul, all the kinds of... Oh, this quote got cut off. Okay, well, it says that unless the person is master of his own soul, all other kinds of mastery don't count. In other words, what you're supposed to be master of, and the only thing you can really be master of, is your own neshama. Everything else is something where you can impact upon, but you're not really the master of it. You're not really in charge of anything else. Even if you think you're in charge. If you're a teacher who's supposed to be in charge of a class, you're not really in charge. You're not the master of the class. Anybody in the class is free to do as they please. Their thoughts can wander wherever they want their thoughts to wander. Remember, place a person's thoughts are, that's where he or she is. So therefore, a person can, nothing outside of myself am I truly the master of, do I truly have control of. Only of my soul. And if I master my soul, then I can influence others appropriately and correctly. But only thing I truly can be in charge of, completely in control, is my own neshama, not anything else outside of me. I can influence, I can impact, I can even do things which compel people to do certain things, like to work or to write or to this or to that, but I'm not their master. Only can be master of myself. Okay, next quote. On diversity, this is on page 7. I cannot consent to take the position that the door of hope, the door of opportunity, is to be shut upon any man, no matter how worthy, purely upon the grounds of race or color. Such an attitude would, according to my convictions, be fundamentally wrong. I don't think it needs any explanation. It goes back to what we said before about Booker T. Washington and Oscar Strauss. The next quote on the page 8. Being American, much has been given to us, much will rightfully be expected from us. We have duties to others and duties to ourselves. We can shirk neither. We have become a great nation, forced by the fact of its greatness into relations with other nations of earth, and we must behave as be seen as people with such responsibilities. It's something which America from time to time forgets, and it's its own peril. We are the leader in the world, and as the world's leader, we have to take a leadership role. And that means we are responsible. We can't say, well, other nations fend for themselves. Americans, as part of the greatest nation on earth, the fact we live here is a tremendous kindness from Hashem, and also responsibility to make sure to try and have a positive impact. Now, this, of course, is something which is not so easy for an individual to do, but an individual has to have this attitude. And we Jews, we have this. It's inbred in us, because we have to make Kiddush Hashem wherever we go. Americans, not so much. But Americans, says Theodore Roosevelt, should have that same attitude, that wherever they go, they represent America and should act accordingly. Okay, the next one, the next page. This one on corporations, I'm going to skip because it's not so much relevant to us, although it's a nice quote to see. The next one, which is on page 10, on striving. You often hear people speaking of life as if life was like striving upward toward a mountain peak. I like that, Marshall, right? That's not so. Life is as if you were traveling a ridge crest. That means the top of a ridge between two sides. You have the gulf of inefficiency on one side and the gulf of wickedness on the other. Helps not to have avoided one gulf if you fall into the other. So, of course, if you think about it, this is the same quote we have from Reb Nachman Breslover. Kola olam kulo gesher tsar me'od. The entire world is a narrow bridge for ikar lo lefache klau. And the main thing is not to be afraid at all. In other words, to forge forward on that narrow ridge, even though one side is one shortcoming, inefficiency, which means basically inaction and laziness, and the other side is even downright evil, we have to stay on that ridge and have to continue along that ridge through this life. The next quote. On success, it is a bad thing for a nation to raise and to admire a false standard of success. There is no falser standard that is set by the deification. It means making a god of material well-being in and of itself. It's the American dream, as they say, is to have a 2-car garage and have 2 cars to fill it, and be able to take a vacation in Disney World or Hawaii, and have material success. Teddy Roosevelt was saying, no, material success, and we as Jews, of course, know this, is not considered to be true success. True success is from our perspective, avodas Hashem and kiddush Hashem. On conflict, the unforgivable crime is soft hitting. Do not hit at all if it can be avoided, but never hit softly. It sounds like the motto of the Israeli army, right? That's the Tzahal. They don't want to go to war, but if you have to go to war, then you have to hit strongly, right? You can't do half measures. You have to, if you have a war against something which is evil, you have to fight strenuously and vigorously in order to defeat it. On the same page, on virtue, no nation deserves to exist, admits itself to lose the stern. Again, this got cut off. It's the same idea. A nation has to have its virtues. Virtues are ways of acting, ways of thinking, which are positive and uplifting. So we all have to have positive and uplifting virtues, which are going to make us better people. Again, as Jews, we know this, that Jews have to be virtuous. We have to have this idea of being uplifted and being elevated and living significant lives. His chiddush was that America as a nation is supposed to have that. I'm not sure our nation actually does have that. On history, there's a little use for us to pay lip loyalty to the mighty men of the past unless we sincerely endeavor to apply to the problems of the present precisely qualities which in other crises enabled men of that day to meet those crises. So that's one of the reasons we study history, if not is to know where what people did in the past about these situations and be inspired by them to know what we should do in the present. The next page. On critics, it is not the critic who counts. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood, who strives valiantly, who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. So his place shall never be with those cold, timid souls who know neither victory or defeat. It's not whether you're going to win or lose, you have to play the game. Where it's like Kodesh Baruch Hu says, it says in Pirkei Avos, Lo alecha hamlecha ligmor, Lo ata ben chorin li batel li mena. The work is not for you to finish. We're always going to end in the middle. Every life ends in the middle. Every day ends in the middle. But you're not free to not involve yourself in the work. Whatever we do in this world, we might succeed, we might fail. But even if we failed by doing what we thought was right, then that is what our Kodesh Baruch Hu expects of us. Not to succeed, but to make the attempt, to have the strive and to try and succeed. But if not, then not. So that is those are quotes from Theodore Roosevelt, which I'm going to go through. I think next week I would like to change periods and topics, and you're welcome to respond to what I'm going to thinking. But I'm thinking of something which I felt was never addressed in my education. I had to learn this myself in my late 20s, I think it was, maybe early 30s, about Hasidim and Misnagdim, Hasidus and Misnagdus, the real differences between being a Chassid and not being a Chassid, between being various different type of Hasidim, different type of Misnagdim, and I think that that's an important historical and philosophical thing for us to approach. And again, I was kind of upset that I was never given that in my education. I once found that I had to, as I said, do my own. Hopefully, again, if you're okay with that, for the next few weeks, past the balance of the year, we will try and understand the history of Hasidim, non-Hasidim, Mikol Misnagdim, and how they approach this world.